I won't spend much time. Everybody knows Jatayuji, and he's going to talk to us today about the Abhirami Andadi. So over to you, Jatayuji.
Okay. Namaste, Deepaji, for the short introduction. Let me share my screen. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Deepaji? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, all of you. So today I'll be talking about Abhirami Andadi, a sublime hymn in praise of Devi. We apologize for this delayed start. I hope still there are some viewers waiting for the meeting to start. Anyway, I'll go ahead and make this presentation. So we are celebrating this holy festival of Navaratri, the festival of 9 nights, honoring Parashakti, the Divine Mother. So on this holy occasion, let's spend some time delving into this great stotra in Tamil called Abhirami Andadi. Here is a verse. உரைகின்ற நின் திருக்கோயில் நின் கேழ்வர் ஒரு பக்கமோ அரைகின்ற நான்மறையின் அடியோ முடியோ அமுதம் நிறைகின்ற வெண் திங்களோ கஞ்சமோ என்ற நெஞ்சகமோ மறைகின்ற வாரிதியோ பூரணாச்சல மங்கலையே. The abode where you ever reside, is it the left side of your beloved? Or is it the root of the 4 Vedas that untiringly speak of you alone? Or is it their peak? Is it the full white moon drenched in the nectar? Or the white lotus? Or the innermost of my mind? Or the ocean that hides everything that falls into it? Oh, Purna Achala Mangala, she who is fullness, unwavering, and ever auspicious. So this is a verse from Abhirami Andadi, as a glimpse to the text before we enter into it, and I tell you more about it. So here, this verse asks Devi, or wonders, as the Parashakti, we adore her and comprehend her in many ways. So one of the most popular form is that of Ardhanarishwara, where she resides on the left side of her beloved. So she is called Vama because she has taken the left side. Vama means left. So is that your abode? The poet asks. So that is the Ardhanarishwara form. Or is it the root of the 4 Vedas? So as we all know, the Vedas are called the Shabda Brahman, and they emanate from the primordial sound or the Nada, Om. So that is a more subtle comprehension of the form of Devi. So is that primordial sound, the source of everything, is that your form? Or is it their peak? So the peak of the Vedas, Veda Shira, is Upanishad. Vedanta, the end of the Veda. So here, the philosophical form of Devi is comprehended. So the very idea of Brahman that the Upanishads speak of, is that your form? So here, as you see in these lines, 3 forms of Devi are comprehended. One is the form where she is on the left side of Shiva, as Vama, and the other is the primordial sound, Om, and the third is the absolute Brahman of the Vedanta. And then it goes on to ask, is it the full white moon drenched in the nectar? So that the moon is here a symbol of bliss. And as we know from the Puranas, the moon, the Chandra, was born when the ocean was churned for Amrita. So Chandra came out of that ocean. So it is drenched in the nectar. So is bliss your form? The bliss, the full bliss, or the white lotus, which is the symbol of purity, or the innermost of my mind, or the ocean that hides everything that falls into it. So here the nirguna aspect is spoken about. So basically you negate every idea, and whatever remains in the end, that is the ultimate reality. Is that your form? Oh mother, Purna Achala Mangala. So Purna means fullness, Achala means unwavering, and Mangala is ever auspicious. So this verse is like wonders about what is really your form, O Devi. So this is a verse from this Stotra Abhirami Andadi. So the first word Abhirami is a name of Devi. So those who are familiar with Sanskrit know that Abhirama means pleasing, delightful, lovely, and beautiful. Abhirama is the masculine gender form. Abhirama is the feminine gender. So Rama itself means the one who delights. Abhirama is adding a bit of a superlative to it. So it is also one of the names of Sri Rama. Abhirama is a name of Rama. Abhirama is the feminine gender. And Abhirami is, you can call it a Tamilized form of that word. In Sanskrit, we say, let us say, Nayika, which is the feminine of Nayaka. But in Tamil, we call it Nayaki, So it is not a purely grammatical Sanskrit word, but it is beautiful. The feminine form of the one who loves Shiva is Shivakamini. But we have the deity at Chidambaram called the Shivakami. So it is a Tamil, you could call as a Tamilized form of that word. It is beautiful. So it is the name of presiding deity, Devi, at a place called Tirukadayur, which is on the east coast near Karaikal, Tamil Nadu. And Antadi is a form of poetry where the verses form a mandala. So the last word of one verse becomes the first word of the next verse. So, for example, if the first word ends Tunaye, the next verse would start as Tunayum. So that way, it is, so basically the verses just keep going one after the other, like pearls strung in a necklace. So when you chant it continuously, it adds a lyrical beauty to it. And practically, it's very easy to, remember the verses. Those who are in the habit of by-hearting poetry or stotras know that if a stotra has 100 verses, it's difficult to remember which shloka comes next. But in this case, that problem is solved because the verses just keep, naturally coming one after the other, because it is Anta Adi. So the last word of this verse is the first word of the next verse. So this is a very special feature in Tamil poetry. So there are many Antadis. There is Saraswati Andadi. There is Kandar Andadi by Arunagirinathar. In fact, Thiruvaimozhi of Nammalvar, the great Vaishnava hymn, the entire 1000 verses are actually set in the Antadi form. There are some portions of Tiruvasagam set in the Antadi form. So this stotra, Abhirami Andadi, the 100 verses are set like that. And apart from being a bhakti poetry, this stotra, it embodies the philosophical aspects of Shakta and Sri Vidya Tattva. So Sri Vidya is an evolved Shakta sadhana, fusing and harmonizing many aspects, Vedanta, Tantra, Yoga, Bhakti, all these aspects. The Tantra, Mantra, and Yantra. So these are the three major aspects of sadhana in Sri Vidya. And the Yantra is, we are all, most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with what is called a Sri Chakra or Sri Yantra, which is a geometrical pattern comprising of many isosceles triangles, upward and downward triangles. I'm sure many of you would have seen it. So just like the way the Yantra embodies the Sri Vidya philosophy, it's a form that represents the quintessential truths of Sri Vidya Tattva. So similarly, this is this Abhirami Andadi, you can consider it as a poetic expression of the same Tattva. So Shakti worship and symbolism and philosophy is not new to Tamil literature. In fact, one of the earliest epics of Tamil, Silappadigaram, it has aspects of Shakti worship, part of that epic, So I don't have time to go over the story of Silappadigaram. Those interested may read about it. I actually had given another talk in Atharva Forum. You can just search YouTube, where I speak about Silappadigaram in detail. So the main, the female protagonist of that epic, Kannagi, she herself is viewed as a pativrata and as a form of Shakti. And apart from that, there are stotras which are part of Silappadigaram itself. So there is a scene in which the forest tribes, they worship Durga in the form of Kottravai. Kottravai is the name, the ancient Tamil name for Durga. And in that lyrical verses, there is a mention of Durga beyond all the three devas, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Durga standing on the head of the buffalo demon, whom we know is Mahishasura, and she is also standing on the head of all the Vedas. So this idea of Parashakti is spoken in Silappadigaram itself in the Tamil tradition. So, and there are many texts in Tirumandiram, one of the famous Shaiva canonical text in Tamil. So that has many aspects of Shakti worship. And Saundarya Lahari, the famed stotra by Shankaracharya, which also embodies the Sri Vidya philosophy, it was translated in Tamil somewhere around 16th century itself. It was so popular that Veerai Kaviraja Pandidar has beautifully translated Saundarya Lahari in 16th century itself. Then you can imagine how popular it must have been. So Abhirami Andadi, in a sense, is a continuation of all this. So this is the place, Tirukadayur. So the temple is beautiful. It's a Shiva temple, but Devi Abhirami, who is the Shakti there, is more popular than the Lord himself, just like Madurai. So it's a place beautiful. So those who live nearby or who are fond of visiting temples can make a pilgrimage to this place. Some of the special things about this temple. So the Lord here is called Kala Samhara Murti. So this bronze icon is there in the temple. A beautiful sketch by the painter Shilpi Srinivasan. So the scene depicted here is, as you see, it is the form of Shiva, Kala Samhara Murti, the one who ends time or Kala. So here it represents Yama, who is also called Kala, right? So we all know the story of Markandeya, the small boy. The destiny is such that the boy's life would end in the age of 16. But knowing this, he doesn't, he is not terrified. But he starts a great penance. He becomes a Shiva Bhakta. And when that predetermined hour comes, and the Yama comes to take the life of the boy, so he embraces the Shivalinga. And Shiva, out of the Shiva's grace at that moment, expresses in such a way that Shiva emanates from the Shivalinga and he kicks Yama with his left leg. That's what the Purana says. So that form is what is sculpted here. You see a slightly lifted left leg of Shiva, and Yama is depicted falling down. So Devi Bhaktas have a very emotive interpretation of why Shiva lifted his left leg. It's natural because it is the mother, it is the Devi whose compassion instantly manifested at that moment, because she is the one residing on the left side of Shiva. So that's why the left leg was lifted and not the right leg, because it is the mother who listens to the cry of the child and instantly responds. So that is Kala Samhara Murti, and Abhirami is the name of the presiding Devi in this kshetram. So this temple town is very popular. People who want to pray for longevity, and those who want to celebrate their 60th or 80th birth anniversary, which we call Shashtyabda Purti or Shatabhisheka. So they come to this temple town because of the Sthala Purana association with Markandeya. So that is the kshetra. Now let's talk a little bit about the author and the legend behind the composition of this stotra. So the author is Abhirami Bhattar. He lived in the later part of 18th century when that region was ruled by the Maratha king Sarfoji II, who is popular in history as the patron of temples, arts, and all the traditional knowledge. He was a great bhakta himself, and he patronized a lot of scholars, artists. The Saraswati Mahal library in Tanjavur, that has a collection of thousands of manuscripts, was actually established by him. So during the reign of this ruler, a Brahmana born in the Kaushika Gotra lived in this place, Tirukadayur. His real name was Subramanya Shastrigal. He was a Vaidika and a staunch Devi Upasaka. So from childhood, he was devoted to the Divine Mother, and he practiced a lot of intense sadhana and he was ever immersed in the bliss of Devi. So at times he used to sing, he used to go to a trance and behave like in a unmatta state, like a madman. So often people used to ridicule him and make fun of him, but he didn't care. So he used to go to the temple of Devi Abhirami every day, worship the Divine Mother, retire into some quiet corner of the temple and continue with his sadhanas. This used to continue. So one day, the ruler Sarfoji, the king Sarfoji, visited the temple for prayers. And after completing the prayer, he was taking a pradakshina of the temple. And he just spotted this Brahmin who, and the spiritual, the spiritual aura emanating from the Shastrigal surroundings, the king was naturally drawn by that, and he wanted to strike a conversation with the man, but his eyes were closed, and he was in a meditative state. So he asked the people around, "Who is this person? He seems to be a great jnani and bhakta." Then they told him, "Oh, this is some poor lunatic Brahmin from this village." But the king was somewhat shocked. Why they? So he was still interested in talking to the person. So he just struck. He was desiring to strike a conversation. "What is today's tithi?" he asked the person. So tithi is the lunar day, like Prathama, Dvitiya, Tritiya, as we say. So it was the day of Amavasya. So with eyes half closed, the Shastrigal replied, "Oh, it is Paurnami, the day of full moon." So the king was puzzled, and the people around just started laughing. So they told the king, "Oh, see, didn't we tell you this person is a lunatic? Everyone knows today is Amavasya, no moon day, but he is blabbering that it is full moon day." The king just moved from that place. He was thinking about it. Why the Brahmin replied that way? So when the king was standing on his palace balcony in the evening, it was pitch dark, and still he was thinking about why the man replied like that. And then on that night, the king had a dream in which there was a divine voice telling him that the man whom you met in the temple today, he is a great jnani. You go and honor him. So then the king went back. The next day, he went back to the temple. He met and he prostrated at the feet of Shastrigal and gave the title Abhirami Bhatta. And even the Bhattar had some kind of an experience during the same night. So he was pondering later as to why those words came out of his mouth. Later he realized that it was actually Amavasya and not Paurnami. And then he contemplated and realized that since he was soaked in the bliss of Devi, which was like a luster of full moon, those words came out of him unknowingly. And then he composed this great hymn, Abhirami Andadi. So which next day it was unveiled in the temple. So this is how the legend goes. And there is another version of the legend in which the king gets angry when Shastrigal replies that today is Paurnami. And then he says that, "What are you talking about? You don't even a Brahmana, and you don't even know what is today's lunar day." And then he says, if it is not Paurnami today, there will be some severe punishment for you. And then later, when Shastrigal comes to know of this royal decree, so something comes to his mind and he says that because it was Devi herself who spoke those words out of me, so today must be Paurnami. So then people tell him that no, in the Almanac it is written and we know that it's not Paurnami, it is Amavasya. Then he undertakes a very harsh penance. It is a bid of self-immolation in which he makes a swing out of 100 strings and he sits in that, and above there is fire and below there is fire. There is the swing, so there is fire from both sides, and he starts singing these verses. So after every verse is complete, one string is cut, so that when even after 100 verses, if the moon doesn't appear in the sky, he makes a pledge that of course it is a self-immolation for him. And it is said that when he was at the 60th verse, so the moon came upon the sky, and the Devi, she just swung her bangle into the sky, and that appeared as the moon. It is poetically described that way. And looking at this miracle, everyone realized how great Jnani and Bhakta Abhirami Bhattar was, and the king realized his mistake. He apologized, and that's how this stotra became popular. So this is another version of the same legend. So as we see, the way this stotra is composed, there is no set pattern here, because the Bhattar is just singing his divine experience. So there is bliss, there is pleading, there is philosophical contemplation, and there is emotion, everything just pouring out one after the other in a very natural flow in this stotra. So here is another verse. Udaitanai vanja piraviyai ullum urugumanbu padaittanai padma padayugam soodum paniyanakke adaittanai ningjattu azhukkayellam ninnarutpunalal துடைத்தனை சுந்தரி நின் அருள் ஏதென்று சொல்லுவதே. Broke you the karmic bonds of this birth. You broke the karmic bonds of this birth. You placed in me a melting heart. You gave me thine lotus-like feet as an ornament of my head. Removed from my heart all the dirt by thine stream of loving grace. O Sundari, the beautiful one, which grace of thine shall I sing? So when a sadhaka meditates upon the form of a deity, there are two ways of meditating, from the head to toe or toe to head. Padadi Kesha or Keshadi Pada, it is said in Sanskrit. So at the culmination of a meditating experience, such meditating experience, in the end, either the face of the deity glows, in the contemplation of the sadhaka, or he gets an experience that the deity places her feet on his head. So that is considered as a great spiritual experience. So in this verse, so he says, you gave your lotus-like feet as an ornament of my head. So what it means is that at the culmination of his meditative experience, he had this feeling that Devi places her feet on his head and blesses him. So it is a form of diksha, one can say. And then all the karmic bonds of the birth are cut, and all the dirts in the heart are washed away. And just that one loving grace of Devi redeems the sadhaka. This is another verse. Dhanam tarum kalvi tarum ஒரு நாளும் தளர்வரியா மனம் தரும் தெய்வ வடிவம் தரும் நெஞ்சில் வஞ்சமில்லா இனம் தரும் நல்லன எல்லாம் தரும் அன்பர் என்பவர்க்கே கனம் தரும் பூங்குழலாள் அபிராமி கடைக்கண்களே. Riches great, knowledge fine, a mind that never tires, godly beauty, friends who do not deceive, all things good and more, a slanting glance from the beautiful eyes of flower-haired Abhirami bestows all this to those who adore her with love. So, a slanting glance is what is called kataksha. It is not even the full glance, just a casual glance from the side, kataksha. Just that is enough to bestow all these bounties on a devotee. So what this means here is that for a Devi Bhakta, her kataksha bestows everything unasked. He need not even pray. Now give me this, give me that. Nothing. Just a kataksha from the Devi's eyes bestows all these virtues and blessings upon the devotee. This verse, மொழிக்கும் நினைவுக்கும் எட்டாத நின் திருமூர்த்தம் என்றன் விழிக்கும் வினைக்கும் வெளி நின்றதால் விழியால் மதனை அழிக்கும் தலைவர் அழியா விரதத்தை அண்டமெல்லாம் பழிக்கும்படி ஒரு பாகம் கொண்டு ஆளும் பராபரையே. Words and thoughts can never describe thine holy form, but it manifests itself for my eyes and for my acts of worship. You rule the half side of the great Lord, Mahadeva, one who destroyed Manmatha, god of love, with his mere sight, with worlds laughing at how easily his oaths got destroyed. O Parapara, supreme among the supreme ones. So her form, her true holy form, is what is called Anirvachaniya. Words and thoughts can never comprehend it. Mano vachama gochara, as they say in Sanskrit. Neither the mind nor the speech can really describe what that absolute truth, Brahman, is like. The absolute. But still, that form becomes gochara for a bhakta or a jnani who truly seeks it. So it manifests itself for my eyes in the ever blissful form of Parashakti Devi, and for my acts of worship out of compassion, out of grace. And then the next part of the verse, it has a satire, what can be called Vyangya Rasa. The Shiva is renowned for burning Manmatha, the lord of desire. Right? So this is the story, a very famous story of Kumara Sambhava. I'm sure many of you know it. So Shiva was in intense tapasya. But obviously the Devas wanted him to come out of that penance and marry Parvati. So they send Manmatha to disturb his penance and make him come out of that. Manmatha goes, he kind of knows that his end is near, because when Shiva is disturbed, you don't know what is going to happen. So, as expected, the third eye, the fire emanating from the third eye, burns down Manmatha. So, such was the vigor of Shiva's penance. But ultimately what happened? So your love, your longing, his desire for you was so powerful that you took half of his body. That the woman who, the man, the great Lord who burnt down Manmatha, the very Lord of desire, he gave half of his body to a woman. What kind of, so how easily his oaths got destroyed for the love of you. The whole world are laughing at it, the poet says. So so in this Vyangya, there are these two aspects, So Shiva burning down Kama is the Manmatha Dahana. So that is like, and Devi taking half of his body is Manmatha Vijaya. So basically, so there are these twin aspects where, Shiva is completely devoid of any desire, that it is an extreme form of asceticism. And on the other side, he is so, his affection and love for his beloved is so much that she takes half of his body. So in the Shakta philosophy itself, these twin aspects are always there. The bhukti and mukti, or bhoga or yoga, what this duality. If you want to relate it to the Sankhya philosophy, Purusha and Prakriti, this Leela of Shiva Shakti, right? The mystery of this playfulness, the secret of how Shiva and Shakti come together to manifest the whole universe. So that is the mystery. And this verse sings that mystery in a very poetic way. And in the Sri Vidya practice, so, the practice is adapted by both ascetics as well as householders. The Shankaracharyas, the hallowed sannyasins of the Pitams. So they also perform the Sri Chakra Puja, the Devi worship, and many grihasthas, householders, and even women are eligible to take the Diksha of Sri Vidya and worship Devi in that form. In fact, Sarva Varnadhikarascha Narinam Yogya Evacha. That's what it is said. The chanting of Lalita Sahasranama and the Upasana of Sri Vidya, or worshipping the Divine Mother in this form, it is not unlike many other Vedic and other practices that have a lot of criteria for eligibility. So this form of worship is open to all. Even as per the Shastras, it is open for all the Varnas. Sarva Varnadhikarascha. Narinam Yogya Evacha. It is also open for both the genders, all the genders rather, both men and women. So this entire, the sadhana, the tattva and the symbolism is so conducive for worshipping Devi in both the forms. The one in which the desire aspect is sublimated with love, and in another aspect where it is negated with dispassion. So it is so in a very symmetrical way, they both merge and harmonize in this play of Shiva Shakti. This is another beautiful verse, again a very mystical one. Tavale ivalyangal Shankaranar manai mangalamam avale avar tamakku annayum ayinalagayinal ivale kadavular yavarkum mele ireiviyumam tuvalen iniyoru deivamundagame tondu seide. She of the great austerities is the wife of Shankara, our Lord. And also is she his mother holy. And so she is Ishwari, the greatest goddess known, above all gods. This I will not this my life, and never would I try any other godhead to serve. So this verse talks Shakti Paratva, or the supremacy of Shakti. As you see in this picture, so this is a painting of Bala Tripura Sundari, Maha Tripura Sundari, where Devi is shown seated in what is called Pancha Brahmasana. So her Simhasana is actually made of 5 deities: Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Ishvara, and Sadashiva. So above all these deities, she sits as the Maharajni, or the queen. So there are many interpretations why this form is depicted like this. So in the Lalita Sahasranama, there is a name Pancha Pretasanasina. In fact, it is said that these 5 deities are more like corpses, Preta, because they remain in a dormant state till Shakti manifests in them. So without Shakti, even the deities who are responsible for creation, destruction, and the other acts that keep the universe in order, all of them are dormant without the power or the driving force or the Shakti acting through them. So that's a very short explanation. If you are interested, you can go read more about this symbolism. But what this verse says is that, so she is the wife of Shankara as Uma, we all know that. But then the verse says she is also his mother. I mean, what is this? And then it also says she is the greatest goddess above all gods. So these are multiple aspects of Shakti. So in the Devi Bhagavata and other Shakti Puranas, it is said that the Adi Shakti is the primordial divine mother. So she manifests herself as the consorts of all the Trimurti. So she manifests herself as the wife of Brahmani, the wife of Vishnu, Lakshmi, and the wife of Rudra as Uma. And she is, so that way there is only one divinity, the absolute Brahman. So we need to understand that the Shakta theology is completely Advaitic. There is no dualism of any sort in the Shakta philosophy. So when for a emotional bhakta to comprehend Shakti as the deity above all, there is an interpretation given that there are these deities, who are subservient to the Divine Mother. But that is just only a conception. Ultimately, there is only one reality which manifests as everything. So, because there is absolutely no dualism or duality of any sort in this theology, there is nothing, so a emotional people who are very much used to the emotional aspect of devotion, right? Like bhakti. So they may think that why Devi is shown above all the gods, why Vishnu, Brahma, and even Rudra, they are all shown as subservient to the Divine Mother. But that is only a conception for the sadhaka to comprehend the absolutist form of the Devi. So that's what. So it is. So how can one even express that kind of thing? So in a poetry like this, it is expressed as a paradox. So the same one who is the mother is also the consort, and she is also above everyone. So this through such paradoxical statements, that absolute nature of Parashakti is expressed in a poetry like this. So this verse says, Nandre Variginum, Tire Vilaginum, நான் அறிவது ஒன்றேயும் இல்லை உனக்கே பரம் எனக்குள்ள எல்லாம் அன்றே உனதென்று அழித்து விட்டே அழியாத குணக்குன்றே அருட்கடலே இமவான் பெற்ற கோமலனே. Good even if it comes, or bad even if it comes, is all the same for me, for I do not know anything that is mine. Have I not given all that I have to thee? O imperishable mount of virtue, O sea of grace, O pretty and tender daughter of Himalaya. So here Abhirami Bhattar speaks his mind. See, he was really in this state when he told the king that today is, the full moon day. Because, so this is a state that Gita, the Bhagavad Gita describes as a complete surrender to the divine. So all sense of agency, the bhakta, he just doesn't have any feeling of agency at all. Whatever that he does is actually an act of the divine. So it is that feeling that is spoken in this verse. So this is the last verse, which is the benediction in Abhirami Andaadi. ஆத்தாளையங்கள் அபிராம வல்லியை அண்டமெல்லாம் பூத்தாளை மாதுளம் பூ நிறத்தாளை புவியடங்க காத்தாளை ஐங்கணை பாசா குஷமும் கரும்பும் அங்கை சேர்த்தாளை முக்கண்ணியை தொழுவார்க்கொரு தீங்கில்லையே. So this is also a kind of Phalashruti for the Stotra. So it describes the divine form. The mother, our Abhirami, she blossoms all the universes. She is of the color of pomegranate flowers. So that is the reddish hue. She is the protector of the entire world. She holds 5 arrows, Pasha, Ankusha, and the sugarcane bow. She is 3-eyed. Forever they suffer not in this life who worship her. So this form, this is the most cherished form in the Tripura Sundari or Sri Vidya Upasana. So there is very deep symbolism in this form itself. For example, the Pasha and Ankusha, or they all represent certain tattvas. So it is Ragaswarupa Pashadhya, Krodhakara Ankushojvala. So says the Lalita Sahasranama, right? So the Pasha, which is like Pasha is the noose, right? So that binds people, right? So it is you can call it a rope. Pasha is actually rope. So what does that symbolize? So it is the raga, the desire that binds people in samsara again and again. So Devi just holds that rope very playfully in her left hand. That is Pasha. And Ankusha, Krodhakara Ankushojvala. Krodha is anger. So Ankusha, as you all know, is that instrument which is used to control the elephant, right? So the Mahout who controls the elephant, he just pokes the elephant with that Ankusha, and the wildly running elephant is just under control. So in a similar way, Devi holds this Ankusha playfully in her right hand. That is like the control of anger, krodha. So her sugarcane bow is the mind, manorupe kshukodanda, and the pancha tanmatra sayaka. So this Ainganai, the 5 arrows. So they are flower arrows. So they represent the tanmatras, the sense feelings of the 5 senses. So that way there is very deep symbolism in this form. So those interested to know more about this can study texts like Lalita Sahasranama or Saundarya Lahari, where this is all described. So in the last verse of Abhirami Andhadi, this form is hailed and meditated upon, and as a benediction, and thus it ends. So the translations in these presentations were all done by me. Of course, they are no match to the beauty of the original poetry in Tamil. It's some approximation and some attempt to convey, what is there in the original. The references, Abhirami Andhadi Urai and Vilakkam from Kiva Jagannathan. And the English translation of this whole text, there is a translation in the web by P.R. Ramachandar. So those who wants to explore this text further can refer to this link. I thank Kalari Gram for giving me this opportunity to speak about Abhirami Andhadi during this Navaratri festival. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jatayuji. It is very gracious of you to have accepted at such short notice. And I truly appreciate the patience that you have shown and everybody else on the live stream has shown with the technical glitches. Thank you very much again. Namaskaram.
Thank you.